I own a training company that delivers in Australia and New Zealand and the UK. We're not actually an RTO, so we don't actually deliver registered training in Australia. Ours is non-registered, which is, after looking at AVETMIS in great detail, I'm kind of pleased about, because there's a lot of effort that goes into the reporting, and I suspect this is just a scratch on the surface to the amount of compliance that's required by RTOs in Australia. I do, however, also, as a matter of disclosure, own a software company called Course Sales, and that does do reporting for AVETMIS. So that's my interest in the AVETMIS area and the RTO space. So let's get right into it now. So resources, you can go on to coursesales.com. You can download a PDF. I'm actually still in the process of completing this PDF. But it's a PDF that will give a summary of the topics that we discuss here, and also more information about using AVETMIS, particularly version 7 and the AVS software. I tend to put the presentations up on YouTube for people to have a look at them, and I try and make the slides available, so I'm very happy to share the slides out near and far. And there's quite a few other presentations that I give around online bookings and sales and those sorts of things you might be interested in. So topics to cover today, I'm going to talk about what AVETMIS is. I'm going to talk about, introduce what you know. Do you know about, there's certain things that are kind of hard to find out about AVETMIS, but I thought I'd worthwhile mentioning them. And to whom and how do you submit data, and the key dates to remember. There's some key dates of things that are going to be occurring in the next sort of 12 to 18 months that's worthwhile remembering. I'll tell you about some of the tips that I've got with using AVS Online, and I'll also talk about, I'll show you a demonstration basically of the AVS Online service. So what's AVETMIS? Basically, it's to satisfy regulatory requirements. There's a requirement for NCVR to gather data based on a training organisation, the enrolment program, student contact information, things like addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and those sorts of things. This data is formed in a collection of something called NAT files. I'm going to show you in a moment these NAT files, and that's what we're going to be uploading into the AVS system. So there's this requirement to gather the data from the registered training providers. To do that, we collect these NAT files, and those NAT files include that list of information there. So it's used by the state training authorities around the country to track what refunds, or rather what funding is required to specific RTOs based on registrations and based on completion of courses by students. So it's got a dual purpose. In effect, NCVR uses it to help with policy decisions, but also state training companies use that data to collect for refunding and monies back to the RTOs. So there's, in effect, there's two types of training. There's funded training, which is as a result of the state governments providing funds to the training companies or to the individuals to do the training. There's also non-funded training where the state's not involved. As a result of this, there's actually some great differences between the files, the NAT files that are requested by NCVR and the NAT files requested by the state organisations, because they're using them for a different purpose. In addition, AVETMIS gathers some quality indicators, and you might know about COS indicators, etc. Those are gathered, and things about employment and qualifications about individuals. So these are the NAT files. They've got very boring names. They're basically NAT with a few zeros and a number. I've taken the zeros away in this case. But you can see we've got NAT files that form information about the training organisation and the delivery location for the particular courses or enrolments that are had within a period. So in the case of the state training authorities, they look at usually a monthly basis. So they're looking at reporting monthly, and that allows them to fund the training companies back on a monthly basis as well. There's also enrolment program and subject information. That's to do with the enrolment of the students on the courses. Again, those are in these 3 NAT files, NAT 120, 30, and 60. And there's also client details, that is student details. This includes the address of the student, the disabilities of the student, and qualifications, any prior education, and that's represented by those respective NAT files, NAT 80, NAT 85, NAT 90, NAT 130, NAT 100. These files are pretty standard things. They're just rows of text, basically. Some of them have multiple lines. In the case of the NAT 10, for example, it just has one line, which is the training organisation information. Others can be quite verbose and quite large, in effect including every single student that has been on a course or maybe received a qualification within a period of time. So we'll move on to the next one. Now, did you know, in fact, there is funding available, just $1,000, for a very narrow band of training organisations that were started in basically the first 6 months of 2013. It's probably a very small number of RTOs that fit that criteria, but this is actually money to allow the RTO to meet obligations around delivering VETNAS files to the NCVR or to the state training authorities. You can actually delay some of your ATMOS reporting, you can delay it, namely the addresses. There's a new address format that's required to be published. I think in some cases it's a bit more complex than was first thought, and so you've got this handover period. Some of the states have negotiated a handover period whereby some places in 2014, some states, you won't actually need to submit some address information. That's still being sorted out. I've spoken to all the state training organisations over the past few days and last week, and to be honest, a lot of them are still not sure about exactly how they're going to implement a VETNAS version 7. A lot of them aren't quite sure, and they're moving towards they're trying to move towards a matching, but Western Australia, for example, seems to be completely different. Their file formats are not even close to a VETNAS 7, so I don't know what's going to happen there. They say they're coming out with a standard very shortly. So if you're an RTO, basically you have to lodge a VETNAS files, regardless of funding. So if you're not receiving any money from the state government, in effect, tough luck. You still have to file a VETNAS documents through to NCVR. You do actually have the option of going through to NCVR or going through to the state training authority. If you are funded, if you have funded training, then you're going to have to go at least monthly, because those VETNAS files go through to the state training organisation. But in fact, if you're for the non-funded training you deliver, or if you don't deliver any funded training from the state organisations, then you actually only have to deliver once, and it's not until 2015. So you're reporting on the 2014 period, but you don't actually have to do any reporting until 2015. So it's going to be a while before some training organisations start to feel the pain, and hopefully those training organisations that are submitting this data on a regular basis probably going to have less pain. So here's just a basic diagram showing what happens. I've sort of discussed it a bit, but students enter details into a registration form. That registration form includes a lot of the client-related VETNAS data, and then it goes to the training provider. The training provider already has a lot of the courses, how long the course runs for, the programs that are being run, the qualifications, etc. They have all that data already. So that's then submitted as these NAT files that we've just discussed. Those NAT files can either go to the state training authority, which is like the funding agency. That's to make sure that funds come back to the training provider. So once they receive that on a monthly basis, they then send the money back to the training provider. I don't know how quickly they pay, probably by the 20th of the next month, I suspect, or something like that. For non-funded training, or it's otherwise called fee-for-service, that information goes to NCVR. Now, if you're lodging information, if you're lodging NAT files with the state training authority, the majority of state training authorities then, I think they all in fact do, in fact I think they're obligated to send that information then through to NCVR. Most state or training authorities seem to accept non-funded training data as well. So you can send it through to the state training authority. But it seems as though discussions with New South Wales seem to suggest that they won't accept information unless you're on their providers list. So that may mean that some RTOs need to submit directly to NCVR. Some of them need to submit through to the State Training Authority, depending if you're on the list. I do believe that if you're on the list and you have non-funded training, you can still submit that to the Training Authority in New South Wales, and it will get through to NCVR. Because once the data goes through to NCVR, it actually populates some of those quality indicators as well that's obligated by RTOs. So it's quite useful to have that information in on time. There's about a 6-month gap. We'll talk about dates in a moment, but I think roughly the data has to be, the net files for non-funded training have to be into NCVR by about the end of March, and the quality indicators have to be completed by end of June or something like that. Roughly those dates mean that if you delay and don't get your AVETMIS data in, which you should because you're obligated to anyway, then theoretically you've got a little while before you have to get your quality indicators in. So here's a rundown of which state training authority to deal with and the system that they are using to manage it. So you can see there you've got New South Wales, you've got the e-payment system. In Victoria, you've got the SVPS. I forget the name of these, but if you do a Google search on these, you'll find the location of where you're meant to upload these net files. Queensland has the Connect, and etc., etc. So I didn't know about Northern Territories. I couldn't decipher, and I couldn't get hold of anyone in the Department of Business to find out how they submit their data. I suspect they're probably going to use AVS. It's quite burdensome for them to create another system altogether. I doubt these systems will disappear. I think you'll continue to use both systems. You'll use the AVS to ensure compliance of the software that you're using to manage your students. But you'll also still need to use these other systems, because these other systems enable, there's business processes, etc. at the State Training Authority that enable them to work out who they've got to pay, which is pretty important. I doubt they'd want to sort of muck that up too much. They're still going to have to work out how to refund payments to them. So some key dates to remember. You've got the 1st of January 2014. That's when you've got to start collecting data. Oh, we've got a question from Wayne. Let's have a look. So if you're non-funded and delivering nationally, let me just get the chat up. Who do we submit to? If you're non-funded and deliver nationally, I suggest you submit to AVS, to NCVR. There's no obligation for you to submit if you're non-funded to any of those funded agencies, those state-funded organisations. They like to have the data because they want to do analysis on it, and they prefer to get it. But to be honest, I reckon just go straight for NCVR. It'll be just too much of a pain to muck around with all the different criteria that each of the states have. All the states currently, none of them are consistent purely with AVETMIS. So it means that you've got to basically change the data depending on where the courses are delivered. So my suggestion to you is to deliver to NCVR. So I hope that answers the question. So with regards to key dates to remember, continuing there, you've got the 1st of January, that's when you've got to start collecting this AVETMIS data. So you're going to be expected, in the case of Wayne, he's going to be expected to report on his full 1st of January to 31st of December reporting period by the 31st of March 2015, as it says down the bottom there. And that's the collection of data there. So you've got to start collecting that data now to be able to submit through. The great thing is with the AVS is that you can actually verify it partway through the year. So you can do a partial verification to check to see whether or not you're collecting the data in the correct way. So you can even do it now. You can basically load up some data, find out if you're producing the correct file standards. So monthly during 2014, if you're a funded organisation, an organisation with training that's funded by the state authority, you're going to be expected to be submitting AVETMIS 7 data. And any assessment, any audits that are done will expect that data to be validated using the AVS software. So it's definitely important for you to make sure early on that you're going to be compliant to AVETMIS 7 data. So there is this application for assistance. Now, I couldn't find anywhere that told us when that expired. I'm assuming you can ask for that money right up until December 2014 because you wouldn't have needed to submit. I mean, you don't even have to submit until 31st of March 2015, so it's possible the money would be available all the way up until then. So you need to contact the Department of Innovation to work out what the expiry date is, or let me know and I'll contact them for you and spread the details out to everyone else. So like I say, 31st of March 2015, deadline for submission of 2014 data. Okay, so moving on. So we've got AVS Online. So moving into AVS Online, basically it stands for AVETMIS Validation Software Online. So you can sign up using that website there, and it's pretty quick. You know, there's not too onerous form to fill out or anything like that. Fairly quick to do, and I can supply these a whole lot of links to you after the presentation if you wish. You got to download the latest Java version and turn off temporary file caching. That's definitely really important. And you want to then download some sample net files. So if you want to give it a go, see how it works, they've got some sample net files on NCVR, and I can provide the links to these as well. They've got some clean files and they've got error files, and I'll show you both of these. I've got them on my computer here. And then you upload them, and then you wait for confirmation. So upload them, validate them, and wait for confirmation via email. It doesn't happen there and then. It actually takes some time, and they email you back and tell you what's gone on. So I think we should now head into. Let's click to edit the presentation. So here we are now on the AVETMIS validation website. You can see up there, validation website URL is there. I've got my details entered in, so I'm going to sign in. Like I say, you can self-register by just clicking on this link. So just click on that, just have a look at it. It's fairly easy to register. Didn't take me long. So there's not much information required there. That's it basically, and you get an email back, and there's no sort of delay in getting confirmation at all. So feel free to go in there and register. Could be definitely worthwhile doing. Now, there's a few caveats around using this software that I found. In particular, things like, for instance, if you're on a Mac. If you're on a Mac, which I've got a Mac Air, it was all working fine, except, and I managed to get the right software installed and all those sorts of things. But what happened is I keep getting these error messages, and the Java applet keeps crashing. I tried it with both Chrome and with Firefox. Neither were very successful, so I didn't go beyond that. Those are the two main browsers used by people. So I find that I can do it on occasions. Like if I'm lucky enough, I can upload the files, but I just don't bother anymore. I just go through Windows. I'm using Chrome at the moment. I have tried to use Internet Explorer. If you've got Windows XP, I find that Windows XP restricts you from upgrading your Internet Explorer version, unfortunately. So you may find difficulty there. So I find Chrome works okay. I had to go in and adjust some settings. Let me just quickly show you the settings I had to adjust. So you open up Java. I had to do this both for the Mac and for the Windows machine. I know it's okay. So here we are. This is the Java control panel and temporary internet files. Now this is what you've got to adjust. Okay, temporary internet files. You've got to go to settings here, and you've got to. It'll be turned on by default. You've got to turn it off. You've got to untick that box. So you don't want to keep temporary files on the computer. For some reason, that stops it working. So we'll definitely do that, and make sure you've got the latest version. Okay, so here we are. We're logged in now. You can see I've done a few uploads previously. So there's a few messages here saying I've uploaded some things. There's a whole lot of messages there if I want to look at them. Bit of information there coming up from NCVR. The menu system's not exactly huge. In collections, it just says new collection messages, etc. There's nothing too great there. Reports, there's no, there we go, duplicates, for example, tells you about what duplicates you've got. A bit of analysis basically on the data you've uploaded. You can only actually upload one set of data at a time. So you upload your range of NAT files in a batch, and then if you want to upload another batch, you actually replace the existing batch that's there. So if I go new collection, you'll see it takes a little while. I think it's quite a large Java applet that has to download, and I do get security messages coming up. So I think the Java applet's not signed by a recognized authority. So this causes a problem when I have to upload the data. So now we've got the collection processing page. It comes up all these as default. Now the period, I'm just selecting annual at the moment because I know the sample data supplied as an annual data. You can also select interim as well, so partway through the year. Now this is an example of, if you can see below, this is a previous amount of, or previous NAT files that were, that contained errors on purpose. Because NCVR supply data that has errors and data that is clean. So if you want to add files, it's going to alert me, do I want to replace these existing files? I say, yes, I do want to replace them. This is where it downloads the Java applet, I think. It takes a bit of time to do that. Gives me a bit of a security. I say, yeah, sure. I don't care about the security. It'll be fine. I think we can trust NCVR. And now it says again, hey, you sure you want to? You're really sure? I go, yep. And then now it's going to ask me to collect the files. So my files are stored deep in my Ignite cloud. And here we go. So here we go, sample clean files. So what you've got to do here is when you select them, you can't just select the directory. You actually have to select all the files. So I hold the Shift key down on my keyboard and select them all. Then they all appear down here. You've got to make sure they've got the right naming convention. If they don't have the right naming convention, you can't add them. If you have an extra 0 in there, for example, it won't work. So it's not just about having .txt at the end. It's about having exactly the right naming convention. Otherwise, the files don't even appear in the list. So don't get caught out by that. So yes, I want to replace the files. But you know what I think I need to now? I'll just click validate. Okay, now it's telling me not to navigate away. So now what's going to happen, now it's done that, it's actually going to email me later. Now I've actually already done this and I've got an email here waiting. Oh, my Amazon orders come in. And this is the email that you receive. So you'll receive an email from Avetmus basically saying, hey, we've done your validation for this period, and it's got the status, it's been validated, so it's all cool, and you've got an attached summary report. So let's just have a quick look at the report, and there you can see, gives you an idea of the data that you've got. So you can see the file IDs there, records, no warnings on these. There's one warning. For some reason in the enrollment file, NCVR have included an error in it. I'm not quite sure why, or it's a warning basically. It's not an error so much, but it's not completely clean data. So there is one, the top line does actually have something that's not quite right, but it still validates. So you know, they're only checking the mandatory data to make sure that there's consistency between the files. So that's what you get as a report, which is kind of nice. So again, you can do the same thing again. You can go back and upload the error data. And when you upload the error data, you do the same process. You basically upload a new collection, and that new collection has the error. Once you've done that, once you've actually used the system once and you've got the same browser open, you don't have to worry about having those error messages come up again. So click on New Collection. Take me to a page to ask me what period of time I'm asking for. So I go annual again, add files, yes, replace. Got a security warning again. Again, go to my cloud. Again, remember to click Shift, select them all, open those files, say yes, I want to replace the existing data. Preliminary checks button, I'm not quite sure why we've got this, because I think it basically means don't do some validation, but we do want all the validation to be done. So I'm just going to click on Validate. This alert stays for a little while, and then you get sent an email, and this is the email you get if you have errors. Oh, wrong one. This one here. So if you get errors, you get again the email, and it's saying it's unsuccessful file validation, and you get a report again. So this report here will show me what errors I have. So this is an example of uploading NAT files that have errors. And again, it tells you how many records you've got, but also talks about the warnings and the errors that you've got on there. If you go back to the okay, now it's disappeared. Good. I think that's basically on a timer. I don't think there's actually anything exciting being done. As you can see, the software is a little bit frustrating. It takes a bit of time. Okay, so that's your collection. So we go back to collections, selection history. We can then have a look at what we just uploaded, and it'll give us some interesting information about the errors. Okay, so it's got an error. Let's click on that and have a look at it. So you can only have one line in here because you're only submitting for one RTO. Now we've got, you can see here, we've actually got a list of the errors. So we can click on the errors and find out why we're getting these errors. So let's click on error here. Find out what these errors are. Now, we can use this to, hopefully you're going to output a VETMIS compliant data. So you shouldn't theoretically get any of these errors. But if you do get the errors, this is the way of working out how to fix the data. Not all your student management software is going to be able to check every single thing. So you might actually enter in the wrong data altogether. It references the training.gov.au website as well, so the data's got to be consistent across that. So you've got these errors coming up talking about invalid codes, etc., postcodes. So clicking on the number allows you then to have a look. There we go. So it's actually showing you the data and showing you why it's invalid. So you can't use those @ symbols. So you can just go through that, basically go through each of those errors, working out what's wrong, then going back to your data, fixing it up, and then re-exporting the NAT file.